right, it's 9:02. Let's get the meeting started. Eric, are you ready to roll call?
Yes.
We have Tom DeVee.
Yep.
Arlene Sortman.
Yes.
Lauren Sully. Here. Jean Christopher. Here. Carrie Snow. Here. Glenn Pepper. Jenna Reed. Here. Molly O'Donnell. Here. Lisa Galliner. Here. Tracy DeFrancesco. Here. And Sarah Martin. Here.
All right. So let's go on to agenda 2 on the approval of the minutes from December 13, 2022. I have a motion.
Well, I'll make a motion. I think it looked okay to me. I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Nope. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Any exceptions? All right, motion passes. Let's go on to number 3, my favorite public event to be heard. Everybody present. No. Number 4, organizational updates. They designate. Well, do we want to? Let's go through introductions first.
That was,
Yeah.
I think that sounds
Let's do that now.
a little more natural, right?
I was looking for the.
So,
Okay.
the before C.
Yeah. Oh, 4C. Let's move 4C after 4. Okay. So, let's just go around the table with introductions. My name is Tom DeVee. I am currently the board chair.
I'm Jean Christopher. I've been on this board for almost 5 years now. And I'm also a representative of the residents. I try to be.
Okay, can I pause for a minute?
Yeah.
Can you just do a brief
Background?
Your background. and
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
your-
I was thinking about that afterwards. So I work for CU as an accounting director. I'm a CPA. I've been on the board now for 3 years. Yeah. And I've been in Longmont for almost 18.
I already did my spiel.
Okay. Arlene Sortman, I've been on the board now, this is going on 3 years, and ever since I've been on until now, it was always on Zoom. So I've lived in Longmont 5 years, lived here originally back a long time ago. And I came from Salt Lake City where I was program manager for the Aging and Adult Services.
I'm Tracy DeFrancesco. I work for the City of Longmont, but it's confusing. I'm the housing compliance manager.
Lisa Galliner. I'm the regional manager for Longmont Housing Authority. I oversee the 9 apartment properties and the 2 commercial properties.
My name's Lauren Sully. I've been on the board for 3 years. Tom and Arlene and I started at the same time. I have a background in the legal field. I was a paralegal for almost 20 years. Go back I work for Boulder County Housing Authority now as a senior housing developer. I worked for Boulder County 10 years. I do not currently live in Longmont, but I used to live in Longmont. I've lived here twice already. I'm originally from Florida. And out of all the places I've lived, which is Longmont, Boulder, and now Louisville, Longmont is like home, basically, my Colorado home. It's the community I identify the most with and have probably been involved in the most. And my office out of the Spokane Kaufman, which is next to one of our properties, Village Place downtown. And so I'm still very much connected with the community, in case you're wondering why someone doesn't live in Longmont. It is allowed.
I'm Jenna Reed. I'm obviously new. I've lived in Longmont for 22 years. Just finishing up raising my kids here. I'm getting college at home and I'm going to launch as a senior this year. My background, work-wise, I spent my career as a child protection and social worker in Boulder County. And now I manage, we have 25 doors of property in Longmont. So I manage all of those.
Talk a little bit, Michigan, but I was like, you're competing with it.
I spend most of my time
recall from our interviews, you have some voucher holders as your tenants, correct? The voucher program is familiar from the user today. I'm Molly O'Donnell. I am the housing director for the City of Longmont, and the housing, thank you. The Housing Authority the staff is housed in that division. So in terms of LHA, I don't have a formal title, but I am a catch-all for everything miscellaneous that doesn't necessarily fit into properties or voucher program. And so I assist Harold on a lot of the either escalated issues or just miscellaneous. And Harold will be here shortly. He's the executive director. He'll probably introduce himself. Executive director of the Housing Authority and the City Council.
Well, I'm also new. My name's Carrie. I lived in Albuquerque before here, and I practiced law there for over 10 years, including doing some stuff for the state as a prosecutor and also doing construction defect work. So I know some of the terms, not a ton, but a little bit. My husband and I moved here just because we just really loved it. We looked all around the Front Range. We thought we'd end up in Denver. That didn't happen. We visited Longmont a lot of times. We just fell in love with it. It's just an amazing community, so I've just wanted to get more and more involved in that community, and that's why I'm here.
Sarah already worked for the police department, been in law enforcement 24 years, been working in the housing industry for about 13 years, running our crime-free housing program. Some of you are very familiar with that. And I've been working with LHA since 2010, pretty much when crime-free started.
She's taken on a role from the city side and really helping us build partnerships and expand.
Sorry. I mean, I think just having that relationship definitely be built, and I think there's opportunity to become more robust within public safety and some of the other things that Harold and Molly and I talked about within LHA and with city partners and nonprofits too.
So are you a member now on the board? Or is this more of a partnership?
She's a staff.
Yeah,
Okay.
staff.
My name is Erica Maras. I am the executive assistant for the city manager's office. So I assist Harold, and he's the executive director. I attend the LHA board meetings. So any questions that you have in regards to the advisory board, feel free to email me.
She also does minutes.
And I also do minutes.
Coordinate all the business.
Anything else involved with or?
Yeah, so in terms of orientation, I met with the city clerk's office yesterday, who manages the city boards, and granted LHA is a little bit of an odd, a little bit different than traditional city boards, since we serve to advise the LHA Board of Commissioners, not necessarily City Council, even if they're the same people. So I asked what their orientation process is, and I'm not sure if anybody's heard from them yet, but they are planning on setting up orientation for all the new board members. So that will be coming. And then in the meantime, I've got some resources from them that I can get to you all, and they're really about what it really means to be the Open Records Act in Colorado, the Sunshine Law, what an open meeting is supposed to entail, and then the Robert's Rules of Parliamentary Procedure, which is when you see them motioning and everything, if you're not familiar, that's where that's all based out of, and there's a guide for that, what that's about. So for today, we'll just kind of follow along let Tom lead the procedure, and then I'll be able to provide that to you just to review. Is email okay contact for everybody? Because I think we should put together an email list if we don't already, and then I'll get that stuff out that way. I think there's a video, the ethics section of the video is what they said to pay the most attention to, at least from the very start. So we'll be sending that out. I think you could go on and on about them, and I don't want to spend too much time today. We have a lot of other things, but what we do want to spend time on with you is an orientation to the LHA. So I don't need one, I've got it up here, so I'll pass those around. These were not in your packet since they were still in development as of this morning.
I think Erica did, but this is a revised version.
Oh, these are revised. they just added a couple of details, sorry about that. Erica always has us covered, and sometimes I'm catching up to Erica keeping us in line, so thank you. Okay, so I'm just gonna open it up here, and then I'm hoping we can do, I'm gonna turn it over for the communities. Lisa can give kind of an intro to what properties we manage, and then we've got a list of common acronyms that, no, they are not alphabetical at this time. They're more in order of like
How they
relevance. So those are here, and I think we'll do a little voucher program intro at the end too, even though the voucher program's not necessarily, I mean, the definitions cover it. But okay, so what you can see here is our mission and vision. We really want to be the resource for housing low and moderate income families in Longmont. And households with disabilities. So we really want to be the leader in the industry. We have other providers in our community that we seek to partner with and together do the best work we can do and provide the most housing opportunity that we can provide for residents in need in our community. So we really want to give a little bit of a background. You can browse this top section at your leisure. But I want to give a little bit of background on why the city and the LHA are so jointly tied. So in years past, the LHA was established in the 70s. And then it is a quasi-governmental organization. And in about 2019, the city and the LHA have partnered together forever for funding opportunities or just going over issues together. There was plenty of history there as partners. And then in 2019, LHA board, which was not the city council at the time, it was a separately appointed board, reached out to the city asking for greater partnership to help fix some issues. There was financial stability issues. I see Harold coming, he's probably gonna attack after this conversation. And just there was compliance issues, turnover of leadership, turnover of staff. So they reached out to the city to help. And in that process, we figured out how many affinities the city and the LHA had and how much work we could bring together to make the operation so much better. For example, partnering with public safety to have like a true partnership. There's not over here. I'm giving a little LHA background. I already introduced you in very basic terms.
Sorry, I had a
yourself.
boost my kid's car.
So there were so many affinities that coming together made so much sense to help get the Housing Authority on a good, financially sound, help with some of the HUD compliance requirements that really needed a lot of work to get over that hump, and help figure out an organizational culture that would promote retention and just a positive place to be. So any comments from you? Basically, I've just introduced why the city and LHA are working together and how beneficial it's been for the operations of LHA.
Did you talk about the necessity of why it happened?
In very basic terms.
Okay.
Compliance help, staff turnover help, financial stability help.
That was all part of it. Genesis really started, actually this is probably more 10 years in the making on everything that Molly started in terms of financials. The revenue model for the Housing Authority was really built on development and using the development revenue to bolster the operational revenue and Then they got behind on development, so then the revenue picture started looking pretty bleak. Always talked about all of that, and then I think everything culminated with, for those of you all that are, I don't know how long you all been in Longmont, but there was an issue actually that occurred here, of which involved the housing authority in the city, and it was when they utilized the city's K-9 units to come in and as a training exercise that then led to obviously a lot of media coverage on Channel 9 and violated the rules in terms of posting and how you approach it. And so, interestingly enough, on that at that time, I think Gene, you may have been on the board.
I was.
And
I came on right after.
right after Gene came on right after. Interestingly enough, the city and the housing authority were not on the same page in terms of how we were going to handle this issue, and so it turned into a bit of a battle between the two of us, and so our approach as the city was our officers that were doing this were not properly informed by the housing authority staff in terms of what they could do, not to minimize our impact as well. They also didn't raise it to their chain of command, and so we went into settlement negotiations before a lawsuit was ever filed. We just said, look, we messed this up. ACLU, we want to start talking to you and settle. We settled pretty quickly. If you all were here, you may have seen Mike Butler and myself talking about this issue. We just owned our mistake, settled with them, and then after a while, the housing authority settled. So they kind of keep going. Picture gets out of the staff. Now Gene is on the board at this time, I think, where they were recognizing the top news stories in the Times Call, and the housing authority director was in the picture of like the Olympics were going on, and it got out. And so at that point, the mayor at the time, Bagley, and the leadership, because the mayor appoints the board, was like, yeah, you got to deal with this. And so everything shifted dramatically. And so then they brought in Luffy from Loveland as sort of a bridge, stabilized it. I don't think anyone had a full idea of what was going on. Jillian then came in, and I'm giving you this detail because it really explains kind of what we've had to go through in terms of stabilizing it. So Jillian comes in as the executive director, really struggles, didn't have the staffing that they needed. Insinuates that she's looking for another job. The board kind of comes to us and starts talking, because at that point, from an organizational perspective, I call it a death spiral. That's kind of what we were in, is a death spiral. And so eventually we start working on it, and at that point it was Karen Roney, Kathy Fedler, myself, initially starting on this. We then start bringing in about 15 to 20 people from the city to try to bolster what's going on in different capacities.
I just want to add, just as a backstory to why we needed that many people, there was like no separation of duties. So there were a lot of violations for like ethics. Not that people may or may not be doing bad things, but there were no checks and balances. We didn't have the staff capacity at the LHA. So we really needed the city to step in.
So we averaged on all of the audits anywhere from 7 to 15 fund meets on every audit. So we start digging into this, and to be frank, and I said this publicly before, when we were in this meeting, I don't think any of us really wanted to do this, just because we very quickly started getting a sense of the work, but we realized we had to do it. And failure wasn't an option. And that's kind of how we all then approached it. It's like, we can't fail, failure's not an option, we have to do it. So then they originally contract where they put me on the board with you all, as an operating executive board member.
Right,
And that was kind of confusing. And so we've gone through multiple phases of what we need to do. Eventually shifting it to where the city council is the housing authority board, similar to Boulder County. We flipped you all into the advisory board, which I think is incredibly important because with what the council has on their plate, it's too hard to really do what we do because there is a really direct link in terms of how we work with you all, how you all work with the residents. You also, and I'll look at the 4 board members that have been here. They've been incredibly supportive in helping us through things. You know, I can talk about, you know, Tom and the work that he's done on the reviewing the auditor and being part of that. Lauren obviously has a lot of experience, talks to Molly about development projects, and then Jean and Arlene helping to support the residents and what we're trying to do there. So this really is a partnership with staff and the board because no one group can do this. We found a tremendous amount of financial issues. Basically, they were understaffed. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail to kind of try to give you a sense of where we're coming from. And again, I apologize. This has been a bad start to the new year. Daughter got a concussion Sunday night at work. Son's car. So it's just not a good start to the new year. So anyway, financially, what we then really completely realized was the development cycle got off. And when the development cycle got off, it completely ruined their financial picture. When we step in, we're getting into the resyndication of Aspen Meadows apartments. And literally the first thing that hit us in that is that the equity investor that was supposed to be involved in the resyndication dropped out. And so one of the first things that we had to do, so that project was like at 95%. All we had to do was close it.
This was all in 2020.
This is in
for
2020.
reference.
Yeah, thanks. And time blends for me on this one, but so the equity investor left. So literally one of the first things that Kathy and I did in conjunction with Sarah was start, she's our financial consultant that does all of our work when we go and issue tax credits. She started getting people on the phone with us trying to salvage the project and get an equity investor in. And so what we realized when you look at it in general, they were spending around $175,000 on their executive director. They were spending about $100,000 to $115,000 on their chief financial officer. So you just look at those two numbers. And then you look at what was happening in terms of the staffing and how much they were paying their property managers, how much they actually had to pay maintenance and field maintenance, and what they had to do accounting so that you can have robust accounting positions in for separation of duties. So when we came in, we were like, all right, we've got to eliminate these upper level positions. We've got to bolster those. And then we started looking at what the city could do, so then what they were paying for IT support, which wasn't working. So the city came in and we took over IT, all the back office functions, so information technology, purchasing, everything that you would see in there. With the money that we were able to save, we've now created, I always forget Kendra's title, accounting supervisor, and that's Kendra Daniels, an accountant, and an accounting technician, which the organization I don't think has ever had that robust of a financial backbone to it ever. And that is completely separate. That is actually overseen by ultimately the city's chief financial officer and our, what is DA's title? Director of Accounting or something like that. So that's completely separate. We then went in and started benchmarking all of the positions and really looking at how we were going to structure it. We structured it by bringing Lisa in initially as more of a regional property manager, and then it took us about a year to really hire everyone in place that we needed from the very beginning. Sarah's been with us in terms of helping us try to stabilize everything and bridge public safety. What Molly may not know, and even Lisa, is even before then, Sarah and I would talk occasionally about the housing authority and the lack of engagement that they would have with Sarah and police when they were bringing issues forward. And so, Jean?
When the confusion was going on after the incident here, all of LHA staff was told not to do anything related to crime free. It was pulled out.
Yeah, well, we didn't know that either.
Yeah.
Which is incredibly important because I'm going to get to operationally what we saw. So we were dealing with the death spiral financially where the organization was coming. There was not a number of the staff needed to really support the facilities. And frankly, none of us had ever done this before, other than just taking management principles and understanding what we've done on housing. And so very quickly we started bringing in people who had done this. We did a report with Betsy Martins, who used to run Boulder Housing Partners, really gave us a good kickoff in what we needed to do, and so we started working. The thing that I told both this board and the City Council was it's probably going to be about 5 years before we're in the point where we're doing development work. This is really more of a testament to the work that people like Karen and Kathy and Molly and Lisa and all the staff did. About a year into it, we started seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And so we made the decision that, yeah, let's go ahead and start going on development. We had one come forward, and very quickly we went into the development process on it. So where we are today is within the first year of taking over the financials, we went down to 3 to 5 findings. Interestingly enough, we had already made the corrections, but because we were already in the year, those findings still had to stick. The last audits that we went through in terms of the LHA audits, we had 0 findings. We had 1 finding on the LHTC audit, and that was already fixed, but that was the one that was lagging on us because we wanted to deal with LHA. The relationship with HUD is in a drastically different place than it was. We just went through the big audit on the lodge in Hearthstone because they're a 202 property. When we went through the debrief on the audit, the guy said it is like night and day different. And he said, you're going to get a satisfactory. He goes, but I can't go above that because that'll bring the attention of DC, because rarely have we ever seen anyone make that drastic of a movement.
From unsatisfactory to, I think it's above average.
Above satisfactory. And so we did get satisfactory. But it was interesting. We've had some conversations with HUD on other issues, and what we found out is they were about to come to the city and ask us to get involved, even before the board did.
And I just want to add at this time too, the relationship between the city and LHA was very contentious given what had happened. And for reasons that I wasn't aware of, because at the time I didn't work for the Housing Authority, I was just trying to be on board because I lived here and wanted to do something in housing. And there was a lot of distrust between, and like competition between Boulder County Housing Authority, Longmont Housing Authority, and bad juju and blood there a little bit. I was accused of being a spy at one point when I joined. Yes, I mean, the acting chairperson at the time was like, why are you interested in this? Did they plant you here? And I was like, I'm literally paralegal in the county attorney's office. I push paper. I have no say. So having the relationships be fixed, and I mean, they're in a much better place than they were. And it's been awesome.
Totally, because working under that mess, and you caught me on, I was still, a nervous cat, but it was like cats fighting. you know, for about a good 6 months. It was terrible. And like you said, it was distrust everywhere. But having the city come in and get it straightened out so quickly, and because the skills are with the city, and I'll add this: we've got skills now additional skills on the board that we're excited about with all of you, all the new people. It's phenomenal, but it has been one heck of a struggle, and I was so delighted a few months back when we brought Sarah on to see that happen again. You didn't know that it had been canceled? No. So yeah, we had to pull it out of all of the
Crime Free had nothing to do with the incident here, and
none at all. I didn't
know anything about it.
It was the attitude. That's the other thing. One of the things, and I was trying to get to this point. Harold mentioned when we were talking about going under the city. One of the things that really, really excited me was Harold stressing transparency. It's like, yeah, we're gonna have problems, but we need to bring out the problem and solve it, not bring out the problem and blame somebody. Let's bring it out and let's resolve it. And that approach it's paying off by millions, honestly. It's paying off. It's beautiful. And I want to commend you and the staff on making it much more approachable. It's working.
So then we started really understanding what was going on the properties, and this is not the conversation that we enjoy, but accountability was lacking in all of our properties. And so we were seeing issues of drug use, we were seeing significant behavior issues, and we got kind of caught because if you think about when we took over and what we were doing, then COVID hit and everything got crazy, especially in this world, because you couldn't do evictions and everything else. So unless they were significant evictions that threatened the life, the health, safety of the residents, and we actually did a few during COVID because of those issues. But where we ended up in once we started coming out of the COVID issues is literally we went through a run where about every Friday Lisa was in court with dealing with evictions and managing these issues. And so the best example that I can give you is when we took over this facility here, was probably averaging 20 calls for service a week.
At minimum.
And so we're down to 1 or 2.
2, 3 in the Waterloo welfare checks.
Yeah, and so that in terms of the livability for the residents, which is at the forefront of our minds, is every resident. Our obligation is to provide a safe place for people to live, and unfortunately, you have to bring accountability in this, and you do have to evict people. But if you don't do it, it's going to be chaos. And this has probably been, from a staff perspective, and this is Lisa and our property managers, the most significant turnaround. We're now able to, and what we've done, so basically the city contract is, from the beginning, they've been paying us about $120,000. That covers some of Molly's time, some of my time, and the accounting and the IT work. But to put in perspective, what we're able to do with the economy of scale is basically hire all the financial staff, hire more property managers, and more maintenance individuals, and actually pay market rates for the staff. So we're benchmarking the staffs now from a market basis like we do the city. And that's actually also changed the applicant profile in terms of what we're getting in. And so, for $100,000, I think what we've been able to do is leverage about $300,000 in terms of spinning that off into really putting the positions and filling the positions where the rubber meets the road and serving the residents of these communities. And so that's a little bit more detail than Molly gave you all, but I think detail that was necessary in this budget because we were using so much of Sarah. We actually put a police officer into the position. I think it was a step 2 police officer, so that we can in contract to bring Sarah in where she's more actively engaged in what we're doing and tying that to crime free. And so Sarah will now be at all of these meetings. She'll be at all the housing board meetings and really working with these. They work already together. I just felt bad that I was taking so much time from police work to do this, and so we funded it. But and to give you a sense of how it works, it's not uncommon on an evening where we have an issue, where we had one where probably should have involved adult protective services, but a son that ran his mom out of a house. I mean, literally at 7:30, we're on the phone. She's coordinating police, we're coordinating how to get the son out of there. And it all worked out, but that's kind of the nature of the work that we do. Up to and including when we had the shooting at Aspen Meadows. Lisa's in New York, Lisa's texting me, Sarah's texting me. I go out, I interface with the commander, and we're able to use our cameras to then help do some things. And so it is a complete symbiotic relationship with the housing authority in the city that I think really is starting to show even results that I don't think we would have thought of. So that's my ringtone.
So to kind of summarize,
One other thing, LHDC, you want to mention that real fast? 'Cause
Oh.
I heard it come up.
the Longmont Housing Development Corporation is a nonprofit arm essentially of the LHA and they were put into place because when it comes to development, if you have your 501c3 corp, you are able to get access to funds and do certain things financially on the development side that a housing authority alone can't do. So it's kind of we have a separate board. There's 3 members on it. They really are primarily on the development side of all of this, but they do own some of the LHA properties still. LHA properties, broad umbrella. They are actually winding down, and we're working on transferring all those assets over to the LHA, and then we'll be thinking about a different method to still access some of that funding over time. But there is a second board that does serve the LHA.
Well, part of it was many years ago, HUD frowned upon housing authorities developing projects. In addition, what we found out is the community didn't want the housing authority to develop projects, and we're going back 25, 30 years ago. But with the HUD rules, most housing authorities created development corporations to parallel their structures. HUD removed that a few years ago, I'd probably say about 15 years ago, and so we can now do the same thing that the development corporation did. And when Betsy reviewed it, and we were looking at the financial strength of an organization, it made sense to bring those together. And the LHDC board, because they weren't developing projects, was really starting to go, why are we here? We're not doing anything, we're just meeting to meet. And so it's sort of been the same people for many years, and they were like, we're tired, we want to retire. And so then that's when we started the combination of the two.
Part of that's kind of just the modernization of public housing and going from what the stereotypical version of it that was coming out, 70s and 80s to the more modern, more integrated, diverse housing stock, all of the ways that people try and make public housing more integrated in a community now, rather than what you think of what was built in that time. So I wanted to touch on, since the city partnered since 2020, really what have we accomplished? And Harold basically hit everything, and I'm just going to summarize. Organizational culture, staff stabilization, financial stabilization, compliance stabilization with our HUD findings and we're audited up the wazoo on every property, on every funding source. Really getting that stuff in order was all part of that stabilization piece. We feel like we've gotten there. It's a constant. We're still finding old things to fix, but overall, what that has done is flip the head on LHA's reputation in the community and with their partners. And that was critical because now we are getting, that's being recognized. People are coming to us asking to partner. And we've been able to, quicker than we anticipated, start getting into that development realm. And at the same time, when the city was granted all of the American Rescue Plan Act funding, and the City Council decided to dedicate a large chunk of that to affordable housing, and because of the partnership with LHA, still a bunch of that funding is dedicated to projects that will benefit the LHA. So now we have a wave of development, plus we have more proposals coming to us than we can even juggle. So development is a huge arm right now, and that's something that's really critical to the future years of operations for LHA. And the voucher program these are like the three pillars that I kind of think of with what's serving LHA in terms of finances and our mission. Development, the voucher program, and the properties. So that's really the key tenets there. So we're all here to serve low-income residents in a way that is safe, secure, brings a positive quality of life to these communities in which they live, support getting our people out into private housing with their voucher programs and keeping that all in compliance and safe and all of the things together. So that's what, when he speaks about the evictions, we never want to evict anybody, and we do we have put in place a process to go through every possible way that we can support the resident before we get there. We don't just jump to eviction because we're the city. We understand that if somebody is evicted from an LHA property, if they don't have anywhere else to go, then they're still in our realm of influence. We are still serving them if they're unhoused, that is still a city, part of the city's mission as well, is to serve those residents. So it's not taken lightly. There was a wave because of COVID and the behavioral issues that it was exacerbated because of that. But I just want to make sure everyone knows that sometimes you have to make tough decisions to make sure the rest of the community is safe and secure and has a good quality of life. So a couple things I thought of while we were talking.
So development, to catch you up really quick on where everybody put they all know. So we're under construction now in Crystal 2. That is a 85 unit partnership that we did with MGL. The Housing Authority invested in Crispin 1. That was one that we had to untangle. So when they eventually were going to do it, it was going to be a straightforward investment, but then we had the DR funds and they used that actually impacted the development partner where they lost money in that deal. And so there was a plan to build a second one. They weren't going to go forward with that plan with the Housing Authority as it existed. When we took over, they came in and that was the first one that we pulled the trigger on within a year. And they said we're willing to do it with you all. We basically restructured both Crispin 1 contract and the Crispin 2 contract. In that the date where the Crispin 1 and 2 will turn over, where we will assume management responsibilities, went from like 10 or 15 years. We brought it down to no later than 5. It's incredibly important because we need the revenue from the operational side to help bolster the LHA fund. But then in terms of how we funded Crispin 2, once they start housing it, we're going to shift to 75-25 revenue split, of which we'll get 75% of the revenues remaining after they satisfy all the requirements, which was another desire in terms of bolstering the financial stability of that project. So that's going vertical now. And so that's under construction. We got tax credits awarded for Zinnia, which is the project just across the parking lot here. That's going to be another fully supported. I'm probably giving her development. But I want to base my dual on this, so you can go. So we will probably close April, May on that project, and go into construction this summer. That is 55 fully supported units, so that's 30% AMI and below. And we're working operationally on economies of scale between the facilities so that we can do this project. This is in the end. We just went out for an so on Zinnia here. So one of the things that we know that's occurring here is that when you typically deal with a population 30% AMI and below, we call it fully supportive services, simply because there is a higher need for things like mental health services, recovery services, and things like that. So one of the things we were able to do with some of the COVID funding is we're working right now with Recovery Cafe, which is a nonprofit in town that really works with people on recovery services. On the east side of this building, looking at a spot where we can do a ground lease with them so that they can build their facility, so they can operate their recovery cafe there, but it's adjacent to these properties, of which we know we need those recovery services are readily available to folks. And so we're developing that. And then the LHDC owned a property on North over in 17th. So if you're familiar with where the Lodge in Hearthstone is and Walgreens, there's a vacant lot there. We just did an RFP for a development partner on that, and we are starting the process in terms of really figuring out what we need to do. On the development side, historically, the Development Corporation and the Housing Authority only wanted to build age-restricted units. So we only have one non-age-restricted unit in our portfolio, which is Aspen Meadow neighborhood. And what we know is that there's a tremendous need for non-age restricted affordable housing units in our community. So as we look at development moving forward, that's really that is what we're focusing on. And so what we're looking at on North Boulder is really a different approach in terms of, and Molly can go into more detail on this later, but really family-oriented housing that brings a mixed use from not as you would think in terms of commercial services there, but how do we bring more residential services there, and or how do we bring more city services there? So is there a way to build daycare into this? Because we know daycare is a tremendous need for individuals in affordable housing. How do we bring potentially space for our youth services, senior services, library, rec center to have a presence in the facility? And so we're exploring all of that. Obviously the financials will dictate what we can and can't do, but we're on the front end of that project. And then to Molly's point about the interest now coming to us, it's like Shark Tank. If you all have ever watched Shark Tank, in terms of the number of opportunities that are now coming to us in terms of partnerships. We've got about 5 or 6 that we're assessing right now, and it could be someone that has a rental housing project that they were going to look at and do more market rate because of the interest rates today and everything else, they can't finance it. So now they're going, oh, we may want to take it into the high tech world. Are you all interested in partnering with us? And so it could be as basic as they want to partner with us as a special limited partner so they can get a tax exemption, and that's pretty easy. It can be as complex as they want to partner with us with tax credits, and then we want the operational components. And so you're just in a full-on negotiation trying to deal with this. You know, literally we had 2 or 3 that were pretty promising. We had another one just hit us over the New Year's holiday. And so we're really just evaluating these, and it's turning into a point where we're taking the best ones. We're not stuck with who, you know, before it was like, well, who's there, let's partner with us. Now we can be really selective in terms of what we're going to bring forward in terms of partnerships.
So I'd say that's the orientation to the LHA and where we are. We did want to talk about the properties. Yeah. Do you want to just give a brief intro to what properties we currently have?
On your sheet, you'll have a brief summary of each of the properties. So we have Aspen Senior Apartments, which is 50 units, 1 and 2 bedrooms for those 62 and older. That was the project that was re-syndicated in 2021. So remodeled, new flooring, new appliances, some facelifts inside and outside on that property. And then it shows all the fundings that are associated with that one. With that re-syndication, it became an LHA-owned property. We have directly next door, we have Aspen Meadows neighborhood, which is the 28 family townhouses, 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms, and that is an LHA-owned property. We have Briarwood Apartments that is adjacent to Veterans Community Project. We own that building as well, but we have 10 studio units, and that's LHA-owned. Fall River, 60 units with 42 bedrooms for those 62 and older. It has a multitude of multiple fundings there. Then the Lodge and the Hearthstone are very similar. They're both 50 units, 1 bedroom apartments for those 62 and older, and they are both funded through the HUD traffic program. Spring Creek, another 60 units, and that's over in Prairie Village, 1 and 2 bedrooms, and those are for 55 and over. So that's our only property that is not a 62 and over for seniors. We have the suites where we're at right now. We have 82 units here with studios, 1 bedroom, and then we have 2 2-bedroom units. We also have a manager's unit on site, and this is an LHA-owned property. Village Place Apartments, which is the 72 units up on Main Street, studios, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, 62 and older. That is currently an LHDC-owned property. It's going to go through re-syndication in 2024, and that will become an LHA-owned property. And then we have 2 commercial properties, which is the 615 Main, which is right next door to Village Place. That is currently rented by Center for People with Disabilities, and they are on a month-to-month lease because they are looking to purchase that building from LHA. And then we have, I have the wrong address, 1228 Main Street, not Kimbark, sorry. That used to be the old LHA offices. It is now housed by Veterans Community Project, and we have a lease with them through April of 2024.
Yeah, and just to give you a sense on kind of the opportunity, so are you all familiar with the Veterans Community Project? So that is a group that started in Kansas City, and they focus on assisting and providing housing for unhoused veterans. Their model is a little bit different than most veterans programs because their philosophy is that whether or not you are honorably or just if you serve the country at any point, our motto is we're here to serve you. They actually were introduced to us via a development proposal that went before the city. So the development at Mountain Brook, the Mountain Brook development, which is the area behind Target and that big area behind Target and Home Depot, they brought them in as part of our inclusionary housing piece. So on that development, you have 8 or 12, 8 to 12 Habitat for Humanity homes, and then you have 26 tiny homes that will be dedicated to providing housing to unhoused veterans. It is that project that is probably the only project in the United States where they're intentionally developing a unhoused program immediately adjacent to market rate homes. I went went to Kansas City, kind of saw what they did. Their success rate is incredibly high in terms of how they deal with folks and how they get them into housing. Literally the day that I was there was a former Marine that had lost custody of his kids. They were in foster care because the mom had lost custody, and literally the day I was there, he got custody and the kids were coming in based on the work that they do. So they actually had rented a space and then got caught in a bad situation. They came to us and said, we need help. We were in this transition. We needed to move our folks in with us anyway. So we moved them in that office. One of the things that we're starting to think about, and I think Zinnia is going to be the trigger point, is, or maybe, I'm going to ask them if they're interested in purchasing the entire Briarwood, simply because we can then use Zinnia to bring our tenants over, but then they can use that to provide more units to individuals, to veterans who are experiencing homelessness, which we're all serving the same group. And the more we can spread it out to where we're dealing with it, the more capacity that brings to all of the organizations. And so that may be a little bit of a, but that's how the veterans came about.
Tracy, do you want to give a brief overview of what we do with vouchers?
So we have housing choice vouchers. We are funded for 518 vouchers. That just means that we could go up to 514 or 518. At this point, we are up to 500 or 420. Under the housing choice vouchers is also the project-based vouchers. So we can take some of our housing choice vouchers and we can assign them to a property. And then the tenants would get assistance at that property. Under the regular housing choice vouchers, it's tenant-based. So they get a voucher, they go out into Boulder County, they find a unit and we subsidize them in that unit. So that's, and it's all federally funded, so we work with HUD. We are regulated by HUD regulations. We have an admin plan that we have to do every year that outlines what our policies and procedures are.
The rules are legible.
So you heard 500. We can issue 518 vouchers, but we're at 420. I need to explain that a little bit. You don't get from HUD a voucher in the dollars. What you get is a pool of dollars, and they tell you here's how many vouchers that you can issue. And so we've been relatively stagnant in terms of the dollars that we have. And so as inflation and rents increase, it actually reduces what you're able to actually issue in terms of the number of vouchers. And so in the HUD tool, you run all your rents and everything that's happening, and then it says, here's what you can really issue in terms of the number of vouchers. And then you have to have a reserve on top of that so that you can absorb any rental increases in there. And so the work that Kendra's really done for us is to identify what is that number that we need to hit so we have the appropriate reserves within the dollars that are available. And the closer you can stay to that, the more likely it is that you're going to get additional revenues from HUD. And what we were finding is they were probably in the 380, 370 range in terms of the number of vouchers they were keeping out on the street. And so HUD never saw a need to give the housing authority more money because they weren't actually using those dollars. And so we're now, our target is 420, and we're holding pretty close to that target.
Oh, issuing, yeah.
Issuing, yeah.
We've got a lot that's issued, but it adds up to 420.
Right. And that's just to make the case that we can get more money from HUD when the opportunities present themselves. And so we can't issue 500. We just don't have enough money.
It's an ongoing performance management thing to inch yourself up so you can issue more.
And if
Show HUD you need more.
If you're under issue, they can come back and start taking your reserves. So it's really important to keep the numbers up.
So are you able to go ask for additional funding on a yearly basis?
Under the housing choice voucher, if they have additional money that HUD's going to appropriate, then they'll let us know, we don't have to apply for that.
It's more
It's
formulaic.
formula driven, so this last round, LHA got 5. But that's 5 more than we had last year, so it might not be a lot right now, but it's something. And having at least we're stronger going in to get different kinds of vouchers, like the veterans vouchers and other vouchers that are available. And from what I understand, when we took it over, the philosophy at the housing authority was to get away from it. So they weren't going after a lot.
I'm trying to find on the radar.
Yeah, no, I mean, so,
Yeah.
that's actually a good point. So when we did our debrief with HUD, on the Lodge and Hearthstone property, so it was a complete fail. And the guy told us the only reason that they got any points was because the building envelope was in good condition. And then he told us something that really kind of freaked us out, where when they were going and they were auditing the housing authority, they were asking for documents, and the staff was saying, well, we have to go to the board to release the documents, audit documents, and so we immediately went and pulled it, because they're all public documents, and talking to people who were on the board, they never had the request, and so what HUD was saying, to the point of flying under the radar, not only were they flying under the radar, they were intentionally being combative with them in terms of the documents they were turning over. And the point that he made is, anytime I ask for something, Kendra gives it, and I can tell where everything's going. So it was flying under the radar and being combative.
Well, every 5 years, you have to do a 5-year plan under the housing choice voucher program. And their first, one of the things that they had said in it was that their goal was within, I think it was 5 years or 10 years to be completely free from HUD money, which means that they wouldn't have a voucher.
Yeah, that is big.
Yeah. So, so I think that's the reason that LHA doesn't have any money in the vouchers at this point.
So, I think maybe go back to
Yeah.
4A, and then that really does roll
I
into.
think we just wanted to say one.
4C, we
Yeah.
can keep kind of brief for now, but I do want to come back to that because it ties well.
Yeah.
But we've got to get A to complete. So,
One thing I also wanted to point out for the orientation is we're going to get quarterly financial statements and voucher update, so we get those on a quarterly basis. And Kendra's here to answer any questions about that.
Sorry, Tom, I was just on the roll.
Oh, yeah.
It's
No
easier to
problem.
remember.
It's good.
here's the designated posting language from last year if you want to use that as a motion example.
All right, so let's go on to 4A, unless there's any other questions. Designate official posting locations for LHA advisory board agendas. So last year, the agendas, so they were on the City of Longmont website, the Longmont Housing Authority website, the west side entrance of the Civic Center, and and we adopted the practice to post all at the LHA properties. We could do that for this year as well. Let's see, do you have any changes? Yeah. All right, so we could do again, it's the LHA advisory board agendas will be posted on the City of Longmont website, the Longmont Housing Authority website, the west side entrance of the Civic Center, and at all LHA properties.
LHA and
Correct.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I think that's a motion.
Yeah, can
I'll motion.
I'll say, okay, I'll second.
any discussion? All right, so the motion on the table again is the LHA agenda will be posted on the the City of Longmont website, the Longmont Housing Authority website, the west side entrance of the Civic Center, and at LHA and LHDC properties. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? No. Motion passes. All right. So let's go on to 4B, elect chair and vice chair for 2023. Do I have any nominations?
I'll second.
Do I have any competition? No. I'm open to competition too.
If you don't wanna do it.
Okay, so motion on the table to have myself, Tom to be as the chair. So any discussion?
Unless there's someone else.
Yeah.
Do you wanna share with how much work it actually is? I mean, maybe we should start with that, or like what it entails.
It's really just running the meetings, and then, I mean, I think we're in terms of a group and a board, we're very open. You know, if there are any questions, and that's the way I run the meetings too.
Yeah,
There's
so it's
questions,
super
let's run it.
formal and hierarchical.
Less formal. Somebody has a question, let's get it out there. Let's discuss it. And then, I've put some agenda items on here, not too much, but I mean, the city does a lot of the weight. Yeah, it's all the way. Yeah. But yeah, it's not too bad. Vice chair is where all the work is, 'cause that's when people show up.
Yep. Arlene's ready to advocate.
Okay, so let's vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? All right, motion passes. I will remain the chair. So let's vote on vice chair. Do I have any nominations?
Arlene, what does vice chair?
Well, actually, what I do is just chair the meeting when Tom is not here, and then deal with the public invited to be heard that shows up, and everyone now I do.
So historically this year, no public shows up when Tom's in charge. All the public show up.
I missed 2 meetings. Both meetings. Yeah.
But they're very calm. Unless somebody is just dying to. Yeah,
Take a stab at it.
I'll nominate Arlene. Vice chair.
Arlene? Okay. You want to do it too?
I can, either or. I don't have any projects going on, so I have lots of time now. The smoke is done.
Go ahead and go.
I know, my project got canned. Thanks, Marshall Fire. So if you want to keep going, fine. If you want a break,
Maybe for
Over here.
I'll second Arlene.
All right, motion on the table to have Arlene be the vice chair. Any discussion? Why should we vote for you? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Any abstention? All right, motion passes. Arlene will remain the vice chair. All right, let's go on to 4D.
So I just want to kind of pick up the conversation where we were, but I'm going to keep it brief. So we talked about what has been stabilized, really what has been part of the work plan, if you would call it, in the past 3 years. And then we have spoken with staff to come up with a couple of items that are really part of our work plan for 2023. That does remind me, we do have overall goals for the LHA that I will also share with the new board members. The board approved early 2022, so I'll share those as well, just for orientation pieces. So our work plan does tier from those goals, but it's really what should we be focusing on this year. And so I want to share what a couple of things the staff has come up with, including not just this group, it's all LHA staff operationally. And then I was hoping that you all would either bring ideas right now or think about it and maybe discuss next meeting just for the agenda size. and think about what, as an advisory board, you would like to take on as a focus for 2023. So, considering that we consider LHA basically stabilized, now that's an ongoing, we are still finding things and fixing them as we go. But the staff really does want to focus on performance this year and making sure that our properties and our voucher programs are financially operating at a high quality. And I shouldn't say quality. We think the quality comes in the resident culture and the staff culture and that type of thing, but more financial performance. We're stabilized, our reputation is what it is. Now we need to really use that as our footing to improve or maximize our financial performance of the properties. And really, because that's where we're going to bring in more development capacity and more funding capacity and all of those things. So there's a lot behind that, but that's one of the major themes operationally that the staff as a whole has come up with. So if anybody has any ideas right now, or if you want to think about it and put this as an agenda item next month, that would be okay too. And also, we didn't offer questions. I know that because that was most of our meeting was orientation, but if there are questions, you can bring those up or think about them as well. You can always just email
Or just be overwhelmed and then think about them. And then
right, exactly. I think you might be more in the absorption mode right now.
Do we
Nice.
have an asset management position to help focus on that?
Not specifically, it's more like we do the asset management responsibilities with what we have, but not a dedicated position.
Is that something that we want?
Will you explain more about what an asset manager would do for the group?
So they would keep track of all of the assets, properties, ownership, owned, work on, making sure that the capital plan is being met, so making sure that rehab is happening, money is being stashed away for those things, planning sort of scheduling, like, okay, this property is gonna need a new roof in 10 years, and just kind of handling long-term health of the buildings, because most buildings are built to last 30 years. And so every 30 years, you really need to go through and make sure, structurally it's sound, which is what's happening at Village Place. Yay. So that's sort of, it's more like managing the long-term portfolio.
So
take some pressure off of others.
Yeah, right now we're definitely covering that as a team. It's primarily in Lisa's bucket as a manager of the properties and with her maintenance team. This year 2023 is the first time that we've had a capital improvements budget established for most or all?
For most
Most of the properties. Right, they have to have one. We didn't have budget to put away for capital needs that are outside of a re-syndication, which just means basically redoing the tax credits to get an investor back in and getting a big chunk to do a major rehab. So this is our first year with even a start of a budget for capital improvements. So right now that's definitely a primarily Lisa, but shared effort, especially as it ties to the bigger rehab projects, which we dump into that development bucket.
I mean, it's we've started developing a spreadsheet with like different things so that we can start planning. As we're starting to see like the lodge needs smoke detectors this year. We know the Spring Creek smoke detectors are starting to go. So we're kind of starting to plan that out with accounting as well.
So that's definitely something we could use advice on, not necessarily since we don't have a position this year, but use your expertise and advice on how, now that we have budget set aside, what should we be looking forward to?
We don't have one.
No.
We need one. We hired one, wasn't a good fit. But that's like our next goal for this year is to hire an asset manager.
Kind of like working with maintenance folks as well.
Yeah, bridging, maintenance,
Yeah.
operations,
Yeah.
finance, and development, because, and really you're getting by now, but it's gonna become overwhelming.
Especially if they have more development.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more development, more things to go wrong. Everything, requirements are changing every year. So, yeah, it's someone who can like manage all of that.
Part of what we're looking at too, So I think the most we built into the capital replacement is $10,000 in a budget. Part of what we're looking at is trying to get enough money to hire an assistant director, which will absorb some of that and then get the revenue. So we're chasing revenue right now to fill an assistant director. Because it's kind of maddening for the two of us now, and so but that's part of it. And then we're bridging also with Katie. So Katie's on the city side, and some of we have the capital pieces, like Katie's working Village Place and some of the other things. So we're bridging from our housing side over, and then I think it's just going to be the constant.
So Katie's our affordable housing development project manager. That with our ARPA funding, or American Rescue Plan Act, we hired to do about $8.5 million of ARPA funds that are directed to affordable housing. So she basically is acting as the development project manager for LHA at this point. And someday that would definitely be, I hope, a position that we could.
And that may be
have
something
LHA.
too, as we get through the push of projects, we can maybe convert some of that position into an asset manager, because we want it permanent, but we gotta figure out the permanent financing outside of the ARPA funds.
She's a term employee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a wave. And so what is it going to look like once the wave of funding is?
Which then that'll be one similar to what we did with Sarah's position, is how do we bridge city funding and LHA funding to make that position exist in perpetuity.
Yep, let me send that along too as part of our orientation packet.
So I think what we want to do then is, let's next meeting, we'll put it on the agenda to go over kind of the 2023 goals and work plan and what we want to see going forward. Just put your thinking caps on and we'll go over the next meeting.
Erica's sending you the words right now.
So let's go on to number 5, development project updates. I think a lot of them went
Yeah.
through. The Village Place,
We'll talk about those.
CPWD, building sale. The other one I had on my list, Sunset Heights. Is that still?
That is
That's
Zinnia.
Zinnia.
That is
Zinnia,
now
okay, so
Zinnia.
it changed.
So-
It's okay. I had it on my list and I wasn't quite sure what it's called.
So Sunset Heights started out at Sunset Heights,
Yeah.
changed to Bluebird. Nobody liked Bluebird, and then landed on Zinnia. So same project.
Okay, 3 that makes more sense to me.
I'll just go over item A and half of item B. That's
Yeah,
what I
A,
marked off
yeah.
that Harold already touched on. So for Village Place, this is the re-syndication of the tax credits for another 15-year plus compliance period, meaning we're bringing in a new investor to refinance essentially the property, keep it in the affordable stock that way, and with because funding comes with is a major rehab. So we are on track on schedule, which at this point we have an architect, not contracted yet, we haven't signed the contract, but contracting is in process. We hired Roseman and Associates. So they have a lot of affordable experience. They don't have a ton in Colorado in the affordable range. They do have market rate affordable in Colorado, but they have a huge portfolio in Missouri and they're setting up a Colorado office. But they had by far the best approach when it came to senior focused properties, tenant in place rehabs, meaning what do we do with our tenants while their apartments are getting renovated. And really they're just the way they approached it in terms of resident interactions and involving the residents in the process was really what sold us on them. Pricing was pretty similar to others. We did negotiate it down a little bit, and we loved what the product, the aesthetics of the product that they were presenting, and they're really eager to work more in Colorado, so we thought that there's some price advantages there, but really what sold us was the team and how they treat the residents as they do this process, specifically in a senior property. So they are big on engagement, and we thought that would be really important at Village Place. So we have an architect on board. So soon enough we'll be doing, they're just doing some preliminary work right now, and soon enough we'll have that first resident meeting with the architect to go over, you know, what they're gonna do, a walk of the building, do that assessment of what's there, and we'll start working on that priority list of what we can include in the rehab. We released an RFP for a general contractor last Friday. And what we're doing is we're just going to, this is out of my comfort zone because I'm used to strict federal funding where you just do bids and it's price-based. But what we're doing, which is more common in the low-income housing tax credit world, is we're putting out to get pricing and qualifications. The pricing is only for like the things, their profit, their fees, the general conditions is what you call it. Just to see, we can still use some competitive pricing there, but we're really looking for quality. So that is out on the streets. We'll be doing a walk of the site with potential bidding contractors on I think the 19th of January. And then that will close here towards the end of January, and we'll be selecting a contractor. So in terms of timeline and schedule, we're looking at that March timeline for our first resident meetings with the hired firms and starting that resident engagement process and the design selection process in earnest. And then we have to start hiring our tenant relocation specialist here this spring as well. So that's the next steps. We still are shooting for a closing of the new financing by December of this year. We are exiting with the existing tax credit equity investor right now. That should be happening in February. So it's moving right along. It's a big project. We have a new investor. The new investor and our lender are selected. It's the same team we did for Aspen Meadows. So this is RBC is the investor and First Bank is the lender. And so that team works great together on Aspen Meadows. They know us, we know them. It's a very predictable process. We also worked with RBC on the Crispin 2 project too. So they're just all over Longmont. So it is moving right along. To the construction one, it's hard to tell. For the architecture, we got 5 or 6. We interviewed 3. And that's all. So we have, and we put the evaluation criteria right up front in the request for proposals, so they know what's going to be evaluated. In this case, we're looking at your experience with LIHTC construction or like tenant in place rehabs, just like this. Your prior projects in the area. We then called references. Some of them we know pretty well, and some of them we would need to find out more information about, and then of course evaluating their pricing. And interviews. We would do interviews as well. Usually we have at least 3 people on an evaluation panel. So that's Village Place. Any questions? So we already kind of heard about the CPWD building sale and what that's about.
So let's go back to Village Place. Sorry. So Village Place, a couple of things. The bidding process is regimented in terms of what we have to do, and you'll hear us refer to cone of silence, which means if you're not on the interview panel, you're entitled to know nothing. And so there'll be times I'll be on it, and I'll know there'll be other times I'm not, and they can't even tell me what's going on. So it's pretty regimented from a purchasing policy standpoint to a city purchasing policy standpoint to a federal. So we have to be really focused on that. Village Place is interesting because we're also having to marry 2 projects together. So on the city side, we have the redesign of Conklin Street, which is going to be from want to speak to first, and that's part of the First and Main Transit Station. So it's right in the middle of it, and we have drainage problems in the back of Village Place that we have to correct. So we're actually working and talking to the city engineering department about the drainage improvements, and there's some of the stuff that they're actually going to absorb in their project in order to get this done. And then we have to correct the needle on time, because what we don't want, we can't really start before they do, and so we're having to manage two different projects to really narrow in the timing to make sure we do it right from a horizontal infrastructure standpoint in terms of completion.
CPWD building. So the Center for People with Disabilities is interested in purchasing the building. We don't really need this building in our portfolio. It doesn't really serve our mission. And it could be a revenue source. If we sell it, it could be a revenue source to put back in and repurpose. So we right now have the city's land contractor doing a market analysis to see what a fair market price would be for that building, and then we'll be negotiating with the CPWD here soon. They're on a month-to-month lease right now until, well, to give us time to do this process and have that negotiation. So that's underway. We're just waiting for the market analysis to come through.
Do you know when that's expected at all?
It sounds like there's not a lot of good comps. So we're working with him right now to figure it. It's taking him a little bit more of an effort than he anticipated. I'm trying to pull up my latest from him. He was chatting over the holidays about
Commercial real
trying to get
estate?
some more. I don't know, but I'm gonna call him and just see if he needs to chat. I was trying to pull this up to see to recall what the unique circumstances were. Anyways.
No, going
Yeah.
to number 6. Items by the LHA Board of Commissioners. A is property tax exemption policy revisions.
Okay, so granted we have a half hour left. We'll just go over the purpose for this. So I included the full red line in this for you all to see, including some discussion items. We plan to take this to the LHA board on January 31st. This is a new policy. We just got it approved the first go around last February. Really what that policy did at the time was primarily set the calculation formula for the fee. Actually, let me back up. What is a property tax exemption policy? Housing authority, there's a Colorado statute that provides that if a housing authority is a special limited partner on the ownership of a property, then that whole property can be property tax exempt. So this is very attractive to private affordable housing developers to get that it's a cost savings. And so housing authorities across the Front Range have policies in place describing when we would consider being a special limited partner, what type of criteria we would want in exchange for that tax benefit for private developers. And so what our policy did that was put in place a year ago, it was really in advance of Christmas coming up and making sure we had some sort of formula set for what that fee would be. So in a sense, they pay a fee up front, and in exchange, they get long-term tax savings. So, and it's substantial and it's very valuable to a private affordable housing developer. So in the last year, we've had, as part of those proposals coming at us from all directions, we are getting multiple requests to utilize this policy. But what we were finding is our policy didn't necessarily go into how getting on the ownership structure needed to happen. What type of evaluation criteria we would want to consider in order to enter this partnership. For example, are you wanting this fee reduction so that you can increase your own profits, or are you going to use that to help benefit lower the affordability of the property or something? And then like an actual process for the application, which wasn't really specified. So there's a couple things in here about the formula. I tried not to touch the formula too much because we just went through that a year ago. There's nothing really wrong with the formula. It's really more process and purpose that I wanted to make sure we included in here. So a couple of the key things. Our original policy was intended to only be for new developments, and how it was written, there was no way for an existing affordable property to try and apply for this, and how to work with them on that. So that's one of the specific requests that have come to us, is an existing property that did not go through this process with the former LHA board for various reasons, and now they're interested, and we need to come up with some policies and procedures for how, if we're going to do it, how does that look? And then a couple of the comment bubbles that you see are really from review of other policies in the region, and just seeing if we want to consider certain things in order to just see what's out there and see if we want to match up with it. Including, well, no, let me come back to that one. Some housing authorities add on an ongoing management fee. Do we want to consider that? The existing fee calculation methodology only uses the first year NOI, but NOIs usually increase throughout a compliance period, so do we want to try and do an average because it's a pretty good deal if you only use the first year? There's just some nuanced things in here that we have notes about if we want to consider doing it this way based on what we see out there. The biggest one that we really want advice on is related to vouchers. Some of the policies in the region that we found include a preference in the evaluation process for properties that house voucher holders. But it's very much just it's part of the application process and evaluation, but it's not necessarily an eligibility criteria. What I mean by that is, one of our existing affordable housing developments in the city asked us if they could benefit from this. Their average unit mix does not fall below 50% AMI. It is primarily over 50, but all of the units are under 60, but it's really like 60 with a couple of lower ones. So what that means is they don't actually qualify currently, but they are a significant provider for housing choice voucher residents. And they said, isn't that worth something to the LHA? So we have a goal of trying to do what we can to make landlords very receptive to housing choice voucher holders. And is this a way that we should consider rewarding that, essentially? This is not in any policies that I could find, specifically as an eligibility thing, if you're not averaging below 50% AMI on your units. So it's not that affordable, essentially. It's not as affordable as most. Is this something that we want to consider? So this will be a question we take to the board, and I would love your feedback and input, whether it's this moment or through an email afterward, anything like that. Any thoughts?
An alternate, like, if you don't meet this criteria, but you meet this one, then you can apply.
So I say currently, and this is what we already had in our policy, at least 20% of the units must be provided at rates affordable to households earning 50% or less of the area median income. Or at least 25% or more of the units must be committed to be rented to voucher holders. And I made up that 25%, so I'm subject to.
I mean, the way I see it too is they're getting their market rent from
Exactly.
the voucher.
Right. I put that in here.
So where's so they're making out enough flood. So they're gonna add on top of that then the property tax exemption.
So I feel like maybe with that comes more skin, like more benefit for us as the substitute partner, like a realtor,
Right.
or management fee, or we get to be a property manager. Because we have that in one of ours where we as a special limited partner at any time, we can say, we're gonna take over property management of the property.
So there, on that note, the policies in the region are, there's a spectrum, right? Some are like, we just don't wanna go there, some want to go there full bore. Our thought is, somewhere in the middle. I mean, we put in here a ROFR at fair market value. And then the debt plus taxes option if we're already like a co-developer or a general partner.
You should make that fair market value without the tax exemption because the property.
Thank you.
You don't want fair market value assuming the tax exemption stays,
Right.
because then the property is very valuable to the owner, buyer.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you mind checking that out and helping me with some language on that? That would be so helpful.
Because it wasn't clear in one of ours.
And then you got stuck.
We're paying.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So part of it is we have a lot of people with vouchers that can't find places to live.
That was gonna be the next question.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
the value.
Yeah.
the value is people that we give vouchers to finding places to live. And I think I would structure it as they accept the voucher from the Longmont Housing Authority, because the other thing that we're seeing in Longmont that's a little bit different is the same thing is happening in Boulder and Louisville and Longmont, or Louisville, Lafayette, and Superior. And so what's happening is whether it's BCH or BHP, a lot of their voucher holders are coming into our community, which is limiting access to our voucher holders, which I think if we gave priority to LHA voucher holders and it's at a certain percentage, then that clears the path for us to be more direct contact, similar to what we did with what's it called? Not Haystack, but the one we're helping them with.
Farmhouse.
Farmhouse. Haystack Farmhouse. Farmhouse, we're doing that with it, but I mean, that's the value I think that we get.
I found that vouchers coming from other, like, housing partners are higher. So I'll take that over a long housing voucher. You're not, I mean, these historically always on my housing vouchers with us.
Yeah, so
Is that dependent on AMI though? The voucher amount?
No, the voucher amount is set by, payment standard is set by HUD.
Okay.
And that's a yearly. And so it's all Boulder County payment standard. So, and I don't know if,
I just find that their amounts are like, so for, I was renting a 4-bedroom recently, and I had Gallup, and she just had 2 kids, and she had a Boulder Housing Partner voucher for like $3,200. I've never seen an amount that high, but she certainly qualified for it, whereas someone from Longmont Housing has the same amount of kids, same household, they're at 21 bedroom size.
so it depends on bedroom size. So a voucher is issued by what they qualify as a bedroom size. So if they're renting a 4-bedroom, they only get the 2-bedroom payment standard. So,
But a household of the same size could get a higher bedroom size due to reasonable accommodations for medical equipment, therapy, and stuff like that. So the same household makeup can have 2 different payment standards based on bedroom size. Sorry, Tracy.
Yeah, so I just find it, just as the end consumer, I find that Longmont Housing is the lowest voucher. For whatever reason, I don't know.
I think that might be a good meeting. I want to hear about your experience.
And it may be historically, because I know, were they on top of it historically on the rate? So it could be that historically you saw that, but I know Tracy's had to catch up to where it is the same.
So I just had to vacate a tenant because I had raised rents for 3 years, and I raised rent $150 on a 3-bed, 2-bath. And they said, not only are we not gonna give you the increase, we're gonna decrease the amount you're getting. So I vacated the tenant, I'm like, sorry, you gotta go. Because I rented at market rate for 5 $500 more than I was offering to Longmont Housing Authority. And they said, no, we're not only that, we're reducing her rent amount, which I never experienced that before, so.
So it could be a change of family size, a change of voucher size.
It wasn't a change of family size.
So what we're finding
So here,
is, what we're finding is that the practice, wasn't following the admin plan. So our admin plan says a certain, family makeup qualifies for a certain bedroom size. And it was all over the board. So we're pulling that back in and we're making sure that voucher sizes match what we say we're gonna do in our admin plan. So if they had a 3-bedroom and you were getting a 3-bedroom payment standard, but they only qualified for a 2-bedroom, we're pulling it back.
Well, now she's homeless, so that stinks. Right, so
Well, if she has a voucher,
she can't find anywhere to go. The voucher, not that she knows. Yeah, I'm just saying, I mean, either you're housing the people or you're not, right? I mean, and so, and as a landlord, you're only willing to do, I was willing to offer it at less than market because she's been there 8 years. And I was willing to offer it at less but not that much less.
So this is something I would have heard about. So, yeah, let's
So
talk.
part of it, so to kind of get into vouchers, it gets interesting because we have the admin plans of which we're responsible to HUD. And so some of the policies that we put in place in terms of, so if you're getting a voucher, it's your responsibility to notify us on any changes that occur within the voucher. And so what we're finding in some of our voucher holders is that changes have occurred and they haven't notified us, and it's changed their income qualifications, it's changed all sorts of stuff, of which we've identified fraud. I mean, we've sent stuff to the Office of Inspector General, we sent stuff to the police department because of the nature of it. And so I get involved in it when it's over $5,000. And so I've had conversations where, if you have 2 kids under 10, then the plan may qualify you to just be in a 2-bedroom. But once the kids become teenagers, then the plan qualifies you to be in a 3-bedroom. There's some version of this. It's all over the place. Or then if your kids are working, you have to report the income of your kids because that comes in the income qualification. So in all of this, we have HUD sort of hanging out here in terms of the admin plan and what you can and can't do, and it is pretty strict. And so, and it gets into the individual specifics. And so within the last 3 months, I've made 3 or 4 agreements with individuals who have owed anywhere from $12,000 to have a repayment plan, and so they can keep their vouchers. And so it's individually specific. We do use the same tables, but yeah, I think we need to talk to Tracy.
Yeah, I was just trying to speak towards why we
Yeah.
then, that would be a benefit of having a specific on our housing.
So you two talk. I want to get this property tax exemption.
That was my other
Continue to go. So my other comment too would be: are we looking as just an or just if you have 25% or more committed voucher holders, you're able to get the property tax exemption? You might want to add another band in there with this as another bullet point to be like at least 30% of the units. Or 60% or less area median income, and at least 25% are rented voucher holders.
Well, and I would add that you maintain that amount, not just at the time of your application, you're like, great, we meet the criteria, it has to be sustained.
And then that means we have to then check up on it and what's that, which process?
A management fee would be applicable.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
And then, would this be the only one that would require that? The checkup on an annual basis, or because in order to get the property tax credits, I'm just thinking of administratively, or is this the only one that we would have to monitor as a voucher center? or is Chaffer going to be, or?
So as a special limited partner at all times, usually in your operating agreement, you have the right to ask to review their financials. Whether you choose to do that, you know, that's your call. I would say if you're gonna ask them to maintain something that is gonna be plan intensive, that you want to maintain like that, because that's not something anyone else is gonna be checking. That's not a chapter requirement, that would just be us requirement.
Well, no, I'm just saying, if you're doing the property tax credits, are you required to send reports and monitor that?
Oh, yeah.
So it takes us out of the equation of having to monitor it. That's my point. Is if we have to monitor the vouchers, that's additional administrative duties on us.
Right. I would say only for the voucher piece. If they're going under that criteria, then we would want a management fee to be checking that, whether it's yearly or sporadically. I mean, I would always be wanting their yearly audits plus whatever they give to CHAPA to make sure that they're meeting compliance.
That's in here.
Yeah, because usually the only way you can get out of this deal is if they're not compliant. Otherwise, you can't really pull out.
So what I'm thinking overall, I think there's still questions to answer and tweak, and I don't think we're ready necessarily for January 31st board approval. I think that maybe through email, I'll start some of these edits and we can kind of correlate it all together, and come up with, and fill some of these holes. And then I'll plan for a February board approval. So I will do that. We'll take this one kind of into a, red line process on email, if that works.
So kind of in line with that then too, is I think in terms of management fee, we got to build something in there. If we're going to add vouchers as an option.
Right.
If you go the voucher route, or even like
pilot, break it out
you
into
got type,
different.
type 1, type 2, type 3. If you're doing type 3, there will be an additional management fee of X amount of dollars to cover the administrative. So.
All right, so I'll get a couple of those things started and then update any of these questions and send that around so we can just have a working version here.
And then did you go to Housing Colorado?
I did virtually, and none of the sessions worked virtually. Okay. So we are sitting here trying to watch them now, putting them aside.
There was one about the end of the 15-year tax compliance.
I was really interested in that.
Yeah, I'll get you the recording and the document.
I have access because I was registered, just nothing worked. So anyway,
that was really good.
Decision mapping for property management. Something we could cover in 10 minutes, or do we want to?
This is yes, in basic form.
Okay.
Because we haven't yet prepared it.
Okay.
But
that sounds good. So let's move on. So let's go to 7.
Well,
sorry.
let me just give the intro. I just want to give the intro because
right.
This week might be taking January 31st. Commissioner Tim Waters has requested this in prior board meetings last summer about it's really lines of authority for property managers to have on site for decision making. Like what needs to be elevated, what are they responsible for, things like that. So we are putting together like a decision making map and that we are hoping to tie with an SOP manual for them. So when we have that together, we'll probably send that around and would welcome your input. So that'll also be an offline thing because it's in development. Okay, that's all we have.
Let's go on to the LHAAB report update on operations. I think we probably covered a lot of that, right? The occupancy report, let's go over that, and the property updates. Please.
So we're still sitting about 93% occupied, so for 2023, on all of my managers and maintenance, we have a goal to increase these occupancies, working together. Now we're kind of through a lot of the supply demand issues. We're fully staffed on the maintenance side, almost fully staffed on the property management side. Our goals are to really get these units leased, rented, and turned fast. I can say just this morning, Tracy and I were talking in the office, I've done 9 credit reports this week, and it's only Tuesday. So that means 90 rentals between HCD and the property management side. So that's amazing. You'll see in my notes where we have some down meth units. We've had a few released. Under the meth contamination though, on the down units, 7114, that is actually now back online and rented. So we're hoping for a rent to move in this week or next week. Still working through some meth units. lot of them are just the post cleaning reports. Those two that were pending the cleaning reports, we just got those released yesterday, and they are now in the adjuster and reconstruction's hands. So hopefully getting those back online in the next couple of weeks. I'm not gonna go into too much details this week or this month.
Well, and the goal is to have 95% vacant.
Most of the properties have a 97% goal this for 2023 of occupancy, with the suites at 95%. We did make the suites a little bit lower due to the clientele, and that we're working with mental health partners to fill half the units.
They don't always have people in the units.
Yes, and they're having a hard time. I had a meeting with MHP yesterday. They pulled 8 names in December and only heard back, total of 14 names in December and have heard back from 2. So
Just as mind-boggling.
well, they're working off 2 different lists right now. They're working off an old DOH list, and they're working off local case conferencing. So
We've pulled 20 off of the suites list, and got 3.
non-resident units, those are like employee units that are set aside that we don't generate rent on and we won't be generating. Or yeah, those are the 2 employee units. So right now we have the Hart.
Managers.
Yeah. The Suites has one and Village Place has one right now.
And those were identified in the tax credit proposal, which I think in this one.
And the management agreements.
And the management agreement, so the investors and everybody have to get involved with it. So.
They're approved through CHAPA for the Suites and Village Place. Aspen Meadows neighborhood does have a manager living on site, but she is paying towards rent. So.
Nothing. Is it a contractor that we use all the time?
For the cleaning, we our testing company, Recycle, goes out for bid for the decontamination. And so they work with anywhere from 2 to 6 people. They just send a mass email out. For the remediation and the reconstruction of the units, we were running into a problem after the Marshall fire of getting anybody to bid. So we found one contractor that was really willing to come in and work on these. We actually just had a second one, Palace Construction, who did Aspen Meadows Senior renovation. They are now getting into reconstruction. So they've already walked 1 unit here, and they're going to start walking our other ones for a second bid. But our insurance adjuster on the Met side has really worked with who's ever doing the bid reconstruction to go through and make sure it's fair. Most of these are insurance claims, so we get most of our money back on those.
Part of what I'm tossing around in my mind is to look, so what we do on the city side is look at on-call contracts. And so we bid out on-call contracts. And so there's an economy of scale that occurs because if you can guarantee that we now know here's how many we tend to average a year, those types of things. If we do an on-call contract bid, then maybe we can get some better numbers, but those are things we've got to work through. Because some of it, when we first took over, we had one that we knew ahead of time meth was involved, and so we had to kind of scramble to get a remediation company because we couldn't even store the furniture. And so that all had to be done with the remediation company. We had to get a pod, they had to seal the pod, and it was a mess. So we're going to explore some different opportunities.
What's the average time?
Depends.
So
It depends on the level of contamination.
yes, if we have a low level, like one that just requires a light cleaning, that's
The light cleaning is still done by certified.
yes, it has to be
it's
certified
still
through
special.
Colorado. They have to have all their certifications. That's typically about a 30-day turnaround by the time we go through the testing, the cleaning, and the retesting, and getting the report to the county and the city to release the unit basically for habitation. A mid-grade, which I'd say anywhere from 100 parts per million to maybe 600 parts per million, is a deeper clean, where that could take a cleaning, a testing, and then go back into cleaning, the removal of certain items, which could be an HVAC system, an appliance, it could be the countertops or the windowsills have to come out. It all depends on where the contamination is in the unit. And then when we start getting those higher ones, those could be 6-7 months.
So, question. experience over the last 2 or 3 years? What's the next? Do you have more high-end problems?
It all depends. Like I had one of my most recent evictions, the resident was only in there for 3 months and it tested the highest Boulder County has ever seen. And they were not cooking in there, but they were smoking quite a bit.
But that was down like a year, right?
No, this one,
This is new.
this is new.
Oh, no, but wasn't there one recently that we just put back online that was down? I think a full
Yeah,
year.
we had one almost down a year because the Marshall Fire impacted it. The testing couldn't be done as fast because they were doing Marshall Fire
Okay, that was
things. Yeah.
So there is no profile. It's all ages. We're having them in. We have senior everywhere.
Your family support.
Here's the thing. We are not hiding this in any way, shape, or form. If we are being transparent about it, we have an insurance rider, which is rare, and we are. Like Chapo has already come to us and like, how come you're reporting meth units so high? And we're like, nope, we're the same. We're the same as everyone else. We're just telling you and doing the right thing and actually reporting it and cleaning it and making sure it is habitable instead of pushing it under the rug. So, anyways, we're no different than anybody else. And literally the profile is anybody.
And it's an ongoing issue.
Yep.
Yeah.
The front range
Doesn't seem to
issue.
be going away.
Yeah, this isn't a LHA issue.
It happens in market rate too.
Yeah.
It's increasing partly because we're getting more advanced in testing and doing it more often.
Well, I think globally it's Sarah.
Yeah.
Sarah does crime free, so she sees the private.
I would say, just like Molly indicated, a lot of folks aren't testing even though they have the information just because.
Unless you
A
test
lot-
it, it's positive,
yeah.
you're required
And
to fix
the law states you should, not you shall. So it leaves many, I mean, and the issue is too, a lot of these buildings in Longmont, I mean, there's some that are pretty old. Like you look at, it's called the Park now, the old Lauderdale on 14th and over. They don't test there, and if they were, it could have been 3, 4, or 5 tenants ago, right? And they just painted, and they're gonna get it from paint. So it's a very tricky, meth is a very tricky thing for many.
My question now is oriented towards what people want. What's the trend? Is it a revenue problem for us?
So it's already a revenue problem. And so what we were able to do in this budget, so we created 2 funds. So we created a capital improvement fund and where we could within the department budgets, and we created a meth remediation fund because housing authorities are lucky they can get insurance for meth remediation. Private landlords cannot get it, but we're concerned about when they're going to pull the trigger and stop insuring meth remediation.
Does that just cover remediation?
Just the remediation. And
It's a double hit.
yeah, so it's a double hit.
We have a deductible on top of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the deductible plus you goes down.
So do we plan a certain amount of loss funds a year?
We're starting to get that and do that as part of the overall budget.
They build it in a vacancy.
We build it in on a vacancy, but we had to figure out how to do snow removal because they didn't budget for snow removal. We had to figure out how to do landscaping because they didn't budget for landscaping. So on the meth piece, so the time can vary. The other thing that I'm starting to be more cognizant of is the consumer is becoming more educated, and you can buy meth tests on Amazon that are really good quality. And what I'm starting to hear is that consumers, when they rent properties, are doing their own meth test. And the minute that meth test comes back, everybody's legally obligated to deal with it. And so, I've talked to a private manager of some multifamily units, and everybody's like, what do we do? As the consumers are getting more educated. Now,
And insurance writers aren't available for those. Sorry.
But if somebody is I mean, have we ever had that issue where somebody tested the unit and came back meth positive and then?
In the
for
private.
us- No, for
not
any of our units.
I think if we do, we're on top of
Yeah,
it. If
okay.
I get a police report, if I get
New testing and turnover
not
of
yet.
new construction.
That's part of,
That's what I was gonna get to, so.
New only.
So two things that we're working on is, how do we build in the testing component for, and to Lauren's point, new construction's easier because you can hold people accountable for it, because there's no question of whether it was contaminated before or not. We're working with the insurance company, because the insurance company has to be beside us on this, because we don't want to create a situation that creates more impact on the insurance company, and then they go, oh, you're doing this proactively, we're cutting your insurance, and so that's a piece of it. The other thing that we're doing is we had a meeting with a company out in New Zealand, we need to get added to that meeting this afternoon, Sarah. So they're one of the few companies in the world that are doing meth detectors. Not the only company in the world. And so it's been vetted by the Southeast Asian Testing Laboratory. And to give you a sense, they're saying to us that it will detect meth for somebody that smoked it outside and then walked in and it's on their clothes. It's like 1 part per billion. And it's tamper resistant. So we had an initial meeting. Molly just said, we've got a meeting this afternoon. They have sent us a proposal in terms of doing a beta test on these meth detectors. And so we're evaluating it. We pushed them to, so they're working with hotels right now.
in the US.
In the US, they just got their FCC and other approvals, but they're working with hotels. They're not, I think we were one of the first governments to reach out to them.
Or housing providers generally.
And so we asked them to do a beta test and give us a price break. So that, because if it works, then it's better to use a government entity than use a hotel. And so we're gonna see what they come up with and start testing it in facilities, in apartments that have been remediated or in new construction. And it's like real-time information.
In the actual units?
In the units.
It's like a silent smoke alarm where it alerts us.
We can get a text or an email at a threshold of what it measures. And one device does up to a 3-bedroom apartment, 1 story. So we got that. That's this morning I talked to her.
Yeah, that's what she just said. So we've got a meeting this afternoon. We'll know more, but if it works, then we're gonna also transition that to Sarah and the crime-free group, because we're gonna let people in the entire community know, because I think that's protection for private landlords and whatnot.
All right, let's switch over real fast. Property updates. Do you want to point anything out, like a couple minutes?
Everything's going good. It was a quiet month for December. We did the bingos at all the properties where we used the resident event funds, and LHA staff went in and did big old bingos and like a year-end bash with the residents. And I think it kind of really boosted the morale of the residents and stuff after some stuff that has happened over the last few months. My team's goal for the next year is to do quarterly events like that, fun events or educational events with the staff, even more often. So we're getting into that now. So.
All right, so let's adjourn the meeting at 11:06. Thank you, everybody, for showing up.